Hello everyone and welcome for another video of Love and War Games. In this video, I'm very excited because we are going to do the unboxing of the Empire Faction Battle Group starter set for Armoured Clash. And we already had a video to show the two-player starter sets and have a look at the rules, etc. But this is the big one. This is what you want if you're an Empire player and you want to start the game. And this means that we can do a how to start with the Empire faction. And we're gonna do, as always, first an unboxing, which should be shortish, and then we are going to take a look at every single of these units, how they play, what is their stat line, their role, how they interact with each other, the construction list for the Empire. So this is going to be the big one for you Empire players. If you want to learn how to play Armoured Clash, this is the one. So as always, you're gonna have some timestamps at the bottom if you want to skip at the part that interests you. We're gonna first open the box, take a look at all the miniatures, just the sprues, the resin one, the terrain, all the little goodies that you will get, okay? And then we'll take a look at the what we call the Tactica part for those new players of you. And this is really like how to play the game, how to build your list, and what each unit do. So it's kind of like what to build. Well, here, not really, because usually you don't have many choices, though sometimes you do have. It's more really like how to play each of those units as a new player. Do note that we do this video really at the beginning of Armoured Clash. So actually the screenshots that I have is like before even the official release of the game. It was like the temporary stats, even though the stats did not change. So if you look at this video 6 months or 1 year from now, it probably will have changed with some balances and stuff, but still this is really like this artillery is always going to have the same role. Each version of the Landship are going to be the same, one shooty and one really to charge forward. Do take this into consideration. And now, without any further ado, let's open the box. The one thing that I would like to show is that this box is absolutely massive. It's bigger than the previous like normal sized War Cradle boxes that you had, for example, for Dystopian Wars. And actually I'm going to just make a little size comparison. So this is one of the massive boxes for Dystopian Wars that we know and love. I keep it as storage for my fleets and armies and stuff. And as you can see, the new box, maybe I should move a bit, the new box is larger, like higher, like quite higher than even the largest box from Dystopian Wars, because it's probably like so full packed of literally everything. The other dimensions do look, yeah, it's about the same, okay? But really, like, it's even higher because they had so many things, which makes sense because this box is the most expensive they've ever released. It's like 150 euros about for this. As always, you have minus 10% if you order on My Place, and then you can choose Love and War Games, and we get like 3% or something like this to help us buy more armies, paint our stuff, etc. So thank you if you do that. But yeah, it's really a massive box, and you know what? It's quite heavy. I received both faction starter sets in a single package, and it was even heavy to carry it from the relay post. So actually, we're gonna start to weight this thing. Okay, when I told you guys it was heavy, it's like about 2.5 kilos of resin and goodies and miniatures and tokens and terrain and everything. So yeah, you do have your weight's worth. So now that we know that this thing is 2.5 kilos, and if you take a faction starter set in each arm, you can do some workout. Now let's have a look at what is inside. Okay, so here is this massive box. Oh my god, it's gonna be quite convenient for storage. All right, it looks full. First, you have the usual little paper to say like, yeah, there is Dystopian Wars as well. Because for you new players, there is the epic scale, like a war game that is kind of like epic for 40k, etc. 10mm war game with large armies. But also in the same universe, you can make naval battles, and there's actually going to be campaign books. So it's the same faction. This is actually the Chinese, like the Empire. And you can absolutely have some campaign when you have this guy that is dropping troops. And the more troops you get, the more forces you have here, and you can really make narrative campaigns. That's quite brilliant. And Dystopian Wars, well, it's kind of like the main game of the channel, one of the 2 main games on the channel with Conquest. And if you want to like have a look, we have a huge playlist of this, and take a look. It's a great game, very fun, very narrative. We continue. Of course, you're gonna have the rules of the game 1.0. This is a beautiful book, so all the rules, very like amazing rules. We're gonna make how to play soon. Like we're gonna make a tactical battle report, like didactic battle report to be fair. And you have all the rules, beautiful book, like very well made with all illustrations. Like you can feel like it's a high quality book, lots of fluff about every single faction. If you want to have a deeper look at the book, have a look at our 2-player starter set video for Armoured Clash. We take a look a little bit more in detail at the game and how it plays. All the tokens, of course, well, some of them have been punched already. They're probably going around somewhere. But yeah, again, we're not gonna take a look at all the tokens, but they're high quality, unlike some other war games where they don't make it in such high quality. Wink wink, Legions Imperialis, because I started to play Legions Imperialis and I was shocked by the quality of the tokens. It's terrible. No company should ever sell that. And here, those are good quality, even higher quality and bigger than Dystopian Wars. In the latest battle report that has not been released yet, we're like 2-3 battle report late on this. We used some of those because I forgot my tokens, and they are larger and much nicer in Armoured Clash than in Dystopian Wars, to be fair. The usual map of the world, so we start to know it as well. Is it gonna be Empire artwork in the back? I hope, but I'm not sure. For the map of the world, again, if you want to have a deeper look and I point at each faction, have a look at the 2-player starter set. And on the other side, okay, it is still the crown, so it's probably gonna be the same for each and every faction. And here you see the British. Okay, we're gonna make a little summary at the beginning of the Tactica of who is the Empire, but basically they are all the Asian factions gathered together, and the ground forces are mostly Chinese, because in Dystopian Wars it's mostly Japanese and some Chinese as well, because Japanese are the masters of the sea. In Armoured Clash you're gonna see mostly Chinese forces. Okay, we have, okay, this, some bubble wrap for nothing. We have some dices, so you do get quite a bit of dices just for you, and you will need some of them. The cards to play the game, obviously. Of course, you're gonna get the Landship, and we're gonna keep the Landship for the end because this is like the big surprise for me. Or some tokens flying around. You are going to get some objective sets, and that's good. And this is like for your Landship because they are not so maneuverable. So when they want to turn, they don't just teleport. You have to make them turn like this. So because they are quite lumbering. These two measure distance, always nice, and some good objective tokens. All the bases for your infantry, and you can see there are a lot of bases, like a lot. Oh my god. I'm not sure do you need all of that? Oh good lord. Okay. Let's keep it for a second. This is gonna be like the secondary things. Oh no, let's take a look now. So it's done, all the tokens and stuff. So you are probably wondering how many of those you can get. The nice thing is that some of them are with terrain, if you want to put your artillery or you want to make a little scenic scene. And if you don't want, you can put them directly in there, and you can use those things to fill up the terrain here if you want to have only scenic scenes. So quite nice actually. Of course, 4 soldiers per base, per stand. And I quite like that it's not symmetrical, so it's gonna look quite good, all of them next to each other, because it's not gonna be just ranks after ranks of clones. They're gonna look like an army on the march, so not exactly everybody standing next to each other, because this is modern-ish era. Let's say World War I or something. We are not at the Roman Empire formations where everybody is perfectly lined up. So we have 11 of those, so I guess it's exactly the right number that you need. Oh, you even have some flags here for your commanders and stuff. Very nice indeed. It's not exactly all the same. I see that, no, it is the same. Each of them has a flag there, so you can really have your commanders and stuff. Very cool, love it. And yeah, you do have a lot of bases. This is plastic, like it's part of the price of the game. Like if you wanted to 3D print or something, even though you don't have anything like this, but this is something that would cost a lot in resin. It's included in there. So happy that it's in there. And we're gonna end up the secondary things, like the things you're not specifically buying the box for, with those 4 sprues of terrain. Yep. So you have 2 sprues like this, and 2 sprues like that, and you can make a lot of terrain. You can see this type of terrain already in our battle reports. We use some of them for Dystopian Wars. They look really brilliant, and you can use it for Armoured Clash, of course, but also for all other games. Probably going to be able to use it for Epic Warpath, for Legions Imperialis. So it's really great that you have terrain in the starter set, because it's like generic, universal 10mm war game terrain. Like, I mean, you can even use it for, is it Flames of War that is in 10mm? Like, those are really great, very modular terrain. We already have a video for this terrain if you want to have a look. It's called Dystopian Industrial Set in our videos, and that's the name of the original set. Have a look if you want to have more details about what you can build and everything. Yeah, you see there's a lot of details. You can put little cranes, little cannons that work both at the scale of Dystopian Wars as artillery, naval gun, and at the scale of Armoured Clash as anti-tank cannons and stuff. So it's really great that they included this. This way, even if you're really a beginner, you're gonna have beautiful tables. And now the thing that interests you the most, of course, all the miniatures. Let's take a look. There's gonna be a lot of sprues, but they're all the same-ish. You should have 4 sprues of tanks. Yes, that's exactly what you get. 4 sprues of armored regiments and 4 sprues the same of infantry regiments. Let's start with the infantry because the empire is defined by its high quality infantry, very specialized. Let's zoom a bit so you can see the details. And yeah, as you can see, if I put my hand behind, you can see the scale. Those are absolutely small. 10 millimeters is small, but unlike like I played the net epic at 6 millimeters where it's too small, like infantry is just a big blob and you don't see any detail. Here you can, at this scale, try to see, for example, the armor and the gun and stuff. Looks really good. This is the flying infantry. I will not point out each and every one of them what they are, but this, for example, is a flamethrower guy. We're gonna have all the green banner guys, which are the basic ones. Some of them are supposed to be with shields, so those in the front. Yes, this is a green banner guard, absolutely. This is the Korean jump pack infantry, because the Koreans are the masters of the air. I will not try to say it. It's like, okay, I will not try to pronounce it. I will pronounce it right next. It's like Banul, okay, I will not say it. But the Korean flying guys. On this infantry sprue, you are also going to get, of course, the little wings there, and you're supposed to have as well, I don't see them. Okay, you get a little officer, and there is, there they are. Okay, if I sweep it around, you get those Terracota Automata infantry. So those are infantry, but they're also heavy. They're very difficult to deal with anti-infantry weapon, because they are basically, if you see the size of like a human next to this guy is like a giant, like a golem. And they are only melee, but they're very efficient, and we love those guys. You're also supposed to have some artillery bike, and I don't see, yeah, there they are. Okay, you got those bikes. So this is like the, I don't know how it is the English name, but it's called the pousse-pousse in French. It's really this with a little biker in the front and a carriage in the back, except this carriage is a bit special. It has artillery, either anti-ground or anti-air carriage, and this is what you get on the infantry sprue. So all the different types, you get the flamethrower team, you get the rocket team, green banners, flying Korean guy, the automatas, and the carriage, like we call it bike artillery in our little gaming group already. And this is what you get on the infantry sprue, and you get 4 of those. Do note, and this is something that is extremely well thought of War Cradle, and I love how they did, is that the size of the unit is multiples of the sprues. And unlike other terrible list constructions such as Legions Imperialis again, but like, damn, this is so easy because the basic size of the green banners, for example, is 8 stands, and you can make 8 stands with those guys, like with 2 sprues. It's like the default size. When you buy one box, it's 2 sprues, and this is 8 green banner guards, and you can make a basic sized unit with 8 stands of green banners, just taking this example. And if you buy another box, you get another 2 sprue, or here you have 4 anyway in default, and then you can make a reinforced unit. So it's going to be 16 stands of green banners, for example. Those are really like massive horde unit. And if you were to buy another box, you can either have different units, of course, as always, but you can make a massive full strength unit of 24 banner guards, which is the largest unit size in the game right now. But this is really easy to not have to think like, oh my god, okay, I need to take this box, but then I need to only build half of the units, etc. No. You buy one box, you can make one multiple of the unit of the size and of each unit, and you don't have to mix and everything. It's extremely well thought, and I absolutely love that. And hopefully other game designers can get inspired by this, because it's so much easier and better for beginners to get introduced to a game where they don't have to make a pre-work research of like few hours to understand what they need to buy to even have a legal list. No, here you just buy however many boxes you want of infantry, of armored units, etc., depending on the play style. We'll see this in the Tactica, but about the numbers, it's extremely easy. And now we go for the armored units, and there you have also very interesting units. You have, of course, the tanks themselves. So here you have one tank, and in the second sprue that you get in the standard box, you can have another tank. So you can guess that they go 2 by 2 as a default size. So normal units, 2 tanks, 1 per sprue. If you buy another box, 4 tanks reinforced, and full strength is going to be 6 tanks. Okay, those are the rolling death unit that someone told me they are like Skaven death wheels, and now I cannot unsee this, but it's a little bit true. It's a little bit true. You also have another type of infantry that is unique here, which is the Jezzail sniper unit. So very good extreme range sniper units that actually they're a gun that looks like a real gun. Can even fight against tanks. We'll see that better in the Tactica, but damn, that's a tough thing. They even have shields in the front of the Jezzail to really hold the line. Very cool. You have the Lion Automata, which is a cavalry unit. Actually, can go quite fast, like I mean, fast-ish. And one of them is with an anti-air rocket. It looks brilliant. You will see how they look in the Tactica once they are built. But yeah, I just love the concept, even though there are not so many air units right now. But in the summer of 2025, there's going to be all the air units for each faction released. So then we're going to keep an eye out for this. There are the jet bikes that you get as well. Beautiful jet bikes, probably my favorite jet bikes so far. We've seen teasers for the Alliance, for the Union, but those look so good. And of course, you're gonna get the heavy artillery, which I don't find right here on the sprue, as I say, but you're supposed to have it somewhere. Probably it's those little bits there. But yeah, you do get some heavy artillery platforms that can send rockets or alchemical fire. Both of them have different roles. And we're gonna say this at the beginning of the Tactica in a few minutes, but the Empire units are very specialized. Like they usually have different variants of their units, and their variants do what they do extremely well. Anti-infantry flamethrower, anti-tanker railgun, or rockets, this kind of thing. They are very good against one type of unit or doing one type of role, and they're really not great at other roles. And finally, what we've all been expecting, because we had already had a look at the sprues with the 2-player starter set. So let's have a look at the massive, oh my god, that's a lot of resin. The massive landship. So much. Okay, it's way more than the flagships in dystopian wars. I can understand why it's expensive. You're like having these massive wheels that will be on the side. Nice level of detail on both sides. The main hull, it looks actually good. You have this shield generator, which is apparently a shroud from the rules. Okay, but it's not the same scale, so let's pretend. Let me put it down, I will. Yeah, you can, if you want to paint every window, you can. It's gonna look very good. Is this a generator? Yeah. You have, of course, the pieces. The building instructions are not inside the box, but you can find them for free, of course, on the War Cradle website. And everything is supposed to clip, like, I think it's going to be quite easy. Do note that on the side, it can use, there are a few variants, it can use the weapons, I think, of the tanks of the Empire. It's the same thing for the crown. So be careful. There are some plastic bits that are supposed to be part of the weapons of the landships, which is actually why when you buy a landship, you have some armored regiments as well, because those pieces are needed. So before you buy this little boy, please take a look on the War Cradle website of the pieces you need here, so you can be careful and not build your tanks first. You also have some little houses and stuff. I think you can really paint them well if you want. Like the landship is supposed to be your main flagship. Lots of different pieces. I love the little yin and yang symbol there. Little door to give a sense of human scale. And yeah, we'll let our painter take care of declipsing everything and painting it. It's going to be Avner's army, actually, the Empire. I mean, look at this details and these engines and stuff. It really gives me the vibe of Mortal Engine, this unit, the landship of the Empire. It's going to be the first guy that we cover during the Tactica, after we check how to build the list and everything. But really, there are two variants. The Death Roller, as I call it, that is not really my playstyle, and then the artillery one that looks so fun to play for me because I'm a damn camper and I stay in the back and I stay alive and I shoot from far away, which doesn't make for the best battle report, so I try to change my natural playstyle when I play on a filmed camera. Look at this, I mean, it looks so great. There is even some little walls there. I think you can even put some snipers and stuff if you want. Like if you want to make some terrain, some nice decor, like scenery. You remember that in the little bases, you can have, for example, put this ground here to fill it up. So you would only have 3 guys there, but kind of like whatever. And then you can have some extra guys, extra snipers, rocket troopers, etc. Just being on your landship, maybe on the little windows and everything, making like artillery fire and stuff. And I think this would make the whole vehicle gain so much more life, and especially give the sense of human scale if you have some troops just hanging around and sniping. It's going to be easier to show you with my mouse once I have the picture of the built landship assembled. And finally, of course, you have the death wheel in the front. It probably looks like this to protect from the impacts. And oh my god, it's actually pointy. it is actually a weapon that you can use in real life. This, okay. Yeah, be careful not to not to hurt yourself with this. And yeah, it looks absolutely. I suppose you want to put some gore around there. I probably would not, because it's I don't like blood and violence. Well, as you can guess, but this is gonna be like, if you see this charging your line, you're just gonna be in panic mode, shooting everything you have at the death roller, and this makes for the funniest game when one player is charging and the other one is just panicking and trying to survive. And of course the heavy artillery pieces, the flamethrower that you can get as well, all the different things. Is it rockets? No, it looks like exhaust vents. Yeah, it does look like this. All right. Okay, that's it. That is everything you get. As you can see, there is an absolutely insane amount of plastic and resin that you get. Like, it is so much. Like, it is 150 euros, and let's say, like, I guess 135 if you go through my place. But you're gonna have a lot of time ahead of you painting this army. It is already a quite sizable army for Armoured Clash. It's not a full size 2000 point games yet. But I guess, like, if you buy this box twice, you already have a max size army. Like, stop buying anything. That's it. Like, to start to learn the game, I would say just buy it once. And that's it. Maybe the 2-player starter sets if you have another like crown player to share it with. But this is already a lot. This is already like a lot of tanks, a lot of infantry, a lot of terrain as well. All the tokens, the rules, the card of the world. You have the game cards, of course, because we said in the 2-player starter sets that it's sad we don't have the cards. Here you have those. It's really like your one stop for literally everything Armoured Clash. You like the Empire faction, you buy this, you're set. 135 euros with a maybe place and everything. Thank you if you go there and you say I'm from Love Wargames. But you just buy this once and you have everything. All right. That is going to be it for the unboxing part, but it's not the end of the video. Now let's get going for the longer part of the video. Yeah, it's gonna be a long one, where we're gonna take a look at each and every variant, how to build your list, and how to play each unit. So here we go for the Tactica, and as you've seen, there are tons of different miniatures in there, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but let's get straight to the point, and I really want this to be a guide for all the Empire players that might join the game now or later. So first of all, you play the Empire. What is the special thing that you do better than others? The first thing that I would say is that this is 1.0 and we have only 2 factions so far. So we had teasers for other factions and stuff. But again, there might be something that I'm saying right now, like, okay, this is the Empire specialty. And maybe in a year when we're going to have, I don't know, Sultanate being released, I will tell you, like, okay, but actually the Sultanate also is all about synergies and combos, or maybe Alliance is about having very specialized units, etc. So do take this into consideration. The Empire playstyle is really to have units that excel at what they're doing. You're going to see the units, they obviously, when you see the design, you understand what they're supposed to do. You have flamethrowers, which is great for cleaning buildings. You have snipers, which do sniper things. You have anti-tank rockets, which, like, each unit does one thing extremely well, but that's it. Like, if you use these units outside of their dedicated role, it's not gonna go great. They have a lot of alchemical tricks in the sense that they can buff themselves, giving themselves like a shroud, for example, with the gas and everything, or they can debuff the enemy, even inflicting damage through alchemical weapons and gas and stuff. So quite interesting in this. This was kind of the same as what we've seen in Dystopian Wars, and they really work with synergies, with units that, again, have specialized roles, and if you use them well, they're gonna unlock combos with each other, with some units blocking the enemy, then you can flank them and you do what you need to do with them. Like, you really need to have this kind of like puzzle where the enemy is going to try to break your puzzle while you try to make your combo one after the other. So it must be quite difficult, I would say, for a new player compared to the Crown, for example. But once you know how to play with them, they're going to be really, really strong if your opponent doesn't counter you. Because when you use these units for their one role, it's kind of like when you have very glass cannon units in other war games. They do one thing, but you pay just for this, so they're very point efficient. It's going to be the same for the Empire. These units that do one thing, you're going to pay much less than a more versatile units from the Crown or other faction that can do different things. And thus, if you use your units for that dedicated role and you don't let the enemy force you to put snipers, for example, in melee or something like this, then you're gonna have a huge advantage because your units are cheaper to do what they excel to compare to more versatile units. As we've discussed, there is mostly some Chinese soldiers in there, like most of it is Chinese because in the fluff of the Empire they provide the most of the ground forces. We see some Korean Bulnabangs, I had a look before, which are these paratroopers, let's say. And of course you're gonna have some Japanese Marines, which we don't have yet, but probably we're gonna get them in later releases because it would make sense to have them. Alright, here we go again with the entire list of everything you have. You've seen how much it is in the unboxing part of the video. Yeah, it's absolutely massive. Just look at the list. Like, you have all of that, and it's like, I will not even try to make the list right now. I would spend like 2 minutes just reading everything that you get. But as you can see, there is a ton. The few things that we will not stop again with are the terrain. As you can see, you can make quite a few terrains with it. The rule books that you get as well, the command cards, the many dices, about 24 if it calculated right, the measuring tools, the objectives, and all the tokens as well. So this is something we will not talk again in this video, but you do have all of this on top of all the units that we're going to talk about. And of course we're going to start, before we analyze the units, with the list construction aspect. It's the same as in Dystopian Wars, in the sense that you don't just make a unit, like list however you want. You need to have what we call battle group, which is the equivalent of battle fleets in Dystopian Wars. So you will have some mandatory units and then some optional units. So let me tell you how it happens. It's the first time we see this if you're a new Armoured Clash player. This is going to be the generic faction. We're going to see some more specific specialized battle groups later, but this is your default one. You want to make a battle group, and you can have as many battle groups as you want in your list. How does it work? You need one commander. So this is mandatory, as you can read from here. Bolster we'll talk in a second. You need a unit with Empire and Commander traits. We'll see there are a few of those. So you need one of those in the battle group for sure. And then you see you can have from 2 to 5 Empire infantry units. So you need minimum 2 infantry units, no matter who they are, and 3 optional units. So you can have up to 5 infantry units, squads, kind of like no matter their sizes, in this. And then they can be bolstered. And all the rest is optional. You can have some cavalry if you want, from 0 to 4. You can have 4 different units of cavalry, jetbikes in this sense, going around, or not at all. You can have 1 field gun, up to 2 armored units, and up to 2 artillery units, depending on the size. And this is where it gets interesting. Depending on the point scale of the game, you're gonna be able to have more or less size of unit. In the default basic size, you can only have basic unit, which is a regular sized unit. I think it's the right name. So for example, your green banner platoons, you can have 8 of them. Your tanks, you can have 2 of them per unit. And that's it. That's it. If you go to a higher scale, which is called like a Clash, I think, then you can have the default unit, or you can have a reinforced unit. So it means when you add an infantry unit in your Empire, right there, it can be, for example, green banners, 8 green banners in a unit, or 16 for a larger unit, and we'll see the stat lines just after. So this is what you can do. And then maximum scale, you can have a full strength regiment, and then green banners, 8, 16, 24, however you want. Same for the tanks, 2, 4, or 6, etc., etc. Then what does it mean to have a bolstered unit? Because you see, it can be bolstered, etc. It means you can be considered to be 1 rank higher than the current scale of the mission. For example, let's take the infantry, it's going to be the easiest. You can have from 2 to 5 units of infantry, okay? One of them can be bolstered, so it can be 1 rank higher. So example, you have 5 units of infantry, and you play at the lowest scale of the game. So all of them, you can only have 8 units of green banner platoons, 4 Jezzail team, etc., etc. But one of these units can be boosted, even though it should not be legal. It's what it means to be bolstered. And then you can have, for example, 16 green banners right in the middle of the field. And same, when you are at the middle level of the scale of the game, Clash, you can have 1 unit that will be at the 3rd level. So 20, for example, you can have 8 or 16 green banners, however you want. You can have 1 unit in this battle group that will be bolstered, that will be at the higher level. This is especially important for the Empire commander, because the landships, which are commanders, can only be played at the maximum level of the game for free. But it means that if you play at the intermediate clash level of the game, you can have one unit bolstered, which will be your landship. It means that it is available even in the middle scale of the game because it will be your bolstered commander unit, and then you can play it, even though it's going to be a lot of things. It does mean that the landships are absolutely not playable at the smallest scale of the game, which is probably for the better because, damn, that would be way too strong. So as you can see, you can have a lot of things, like one commander and 2 infantry mandatory, okay. A little bit of everything, not so many, like 1 field gun, okay. 2 artillery, 2 tanks, 4 cavalry. Like, it's a little bit of everything, that is great. And you have 2 mainstay units. Mainstay units are the units that you can spam, in the sense that you can never have twice the same unit in a same battle group, which does limit you quite a bit, except if they are mainstay units. So in this case, if you want 5 infantry units, you can have, for example, 3 or 4 green guard platoons, like green banner guard platoons, because they are mainstay. You can spam them if you want. But if you want to have, for example, 2 units of flamethrowers or rocket teams or whatever, you cannot put 2 different units of rocket teams in there. You can have a bolstered rocket team, so 1 unit, 1 activation. But if you want to spam them, not possible here. So this is really something that is quite important to take into consideration. You can not spam the different activations of specialist units. Same as Dystopian Wars, and usually it's not as limitative as it can feel when you read it like this. From experience of Dystopian Wars, you can have quite large units, it takes a lot of points, and it's usually not a good idea at all to only spam, I don't know, flamethrowers in the list, because then your enemy has tanks and you're not in a good position. So it's not as restrictive as it can be, but having in the Empire faction battle group the tanks and the green banners being your mainstay, quite cool. And then they have a bonus, which is for the Empire, and this means that when you check visibility for a ranged attack, so basically can you shoot on them, you can discard a card, one of your cards, the command cards. No way to counter it for your opponent, it's not like you use it, it's automatic success. You throw a card away, you burn it, and then you ignore a single friendly unit. Understand, the entire unit is ignored for shooting. So you can kind of like shoot over your guys, or you ignore your guy. It's not like Skaven, like you don't kill your own man. They just, like, let's say you're very well synchronized and they go down at the right moment and you can shoot above their shoulders. So quite a good capacity actually for some of your units, especially when you start to have those very powerful but short range units. You might want to, for example, have a unit that protects you, very tanky units in the front. For example, your huge pack of, I don't know, 24 green banner guards that will be a wall to protect your guys, your infantry that are powerful but fragile. And then when you need to shoot with your powerful, expensive, fragile infantry, you can ignore your big wall of green banner guards and shoot above them, even though they would block your line of sight otherwise. So very, very important capacity here for the Empire infantry especially. And then you have 2 other battle groups. So the first one is the Kanglong Guardian Auxiliary Battle Group. So this one is, I would say, more about elite units. We can see that it's a little bit smaller, and what you can, like, everything is the same except you have 1 less needed required infantry, okay. Still things can be bolstered left and right, okay. It's pretty much the same. You also have green banners and Fangun main battle tanks as mainstay, so almost the same, but the bonus is different. You have Celestian Guards, so kind of unique elite units, and those guys can have a special command to an Empire unit anywhere. It doesn't need to be targeted to these Celestian Guards. Like if your force contains this battle group, you can issue this special command to an Empire unit anywhere. So just the fact of having Celestian Guards mean you unlock this power, quite good. It doesn't say that you have a limit on how many you can do, so just having a very small Celestian unit is great, perfect. It is a command unit, so your enemy can try to counter it with a higher power card, so be careful with that. But if the command is successful, it means you make a discipline test, like you would, usually, but you have +2 bonus for the test. So when you really want to hold your ground, and it's very important you don't break after a discipline test because you got some losses and stuff, you first burn the card. So this is quite card intensive, but you burn a card, and the next one that you will pull for your discipline test is going to be +2. So quite good bonus to have on the linchpin. I wouldn't spam this battle group because you wouldn't gain so much from it, but still, I would say it's important to have at least one battle group of Celestian Guards in your regiments, like in your army as a whole. Then we go for the Biao Strike Formation Auxiliary Battle Group. Both of those are auxiliary, so you need to have an Empire generic faction battle group each time you want to take the auxiliaries. So you cannot spam them. You cannot play a game only with auxiliary battle group. Something to take into consideration. And as you can see, it's quite different. No armor, no artillery, no field guns. You have one Empire Commander mandatory, okay, and one Empire Infantry mandatory. You can have up to 4 cavalry / armor. So 4 cavalry, 4 armor, 3 cavalry, 1 armor, etc. Okay. And it's quite different. You still have the Fangun as the mainstay units, okay, but the infantry that is mainstay is the Bulnabang winged infantry, the Koreans. So it makes you think like, oh, that's to be a bit different. Okay, what more can I say? It also unlocks you a special command for any Empire unit. So the same as what we said for the Guardians, like it's good to have at least one. If this command is successful, then the unit that you've chosen increases its speed by 2. Might not sound huge, but for infantry units, it's quite good, especially when you want to make a charge or you want to get in melee, for example, with your Bulnabangs. It's not game defining, those capacities, but it's good. I would say it would be good at very high level, 2000 points, to have 2 Empire faction battle groups, yes, and 1 of each of those auxiliary battle groups. If you can, have a few command platoons, and maybe at some point 2 landships, etc. Starts to be a lot, but if you can do this, you will have access to the full range of the special commands of the Empire, and then you have a lot of tactical flexibility, because you don't spend points on unlocking this capacity. It's just in your list building that you need to be clever. Apart from that, only bonuses. And now we start to take a look at what will take us a while, all the different units. We will start with the biggest of them all, the Laoshan Landship, and that's a big one. It's 510 points. This is, even at 2000 points games, this is 1/4 of your list at the highest point scales. This is absolutely massive, it's huge. And I think at some points you will want to play at 3000 points a whole day if you want to have few landships, but this is absolutely glorious. This thing has a defense of 4, quite high, and a damage limit of 16. So you need to do 64 hits at the best to try to destroy this thing, because each time you breach the defense you make a point of damage, and it has 16 points, and that's huge. So this thing is really just going to charge forward, and it's going to take a while for you to stop it. So it's probably going to reach your range. Be very careful. It is slow, like it is lumbering. Ponderous is the name, as you can see of the rule there. But it doesn't turn so fast. But damn, this is just a battering ram. So apart from being a battering ram, like what does it do? Speed of 6, okay. One model. Like let's skip the little details. You have 3 types of weapons, and as you know from our 2-player starter sets video, it depends. It doesn't say like this story does this, this story does that. No, you have your attacks against ranged unit, your ranged attack against light units, your ranged attack against heavy units, which are armored and tanks and golems and stuff, then against aerials, and that's it. Then finally you have the impact. This unit has this rule, all-out attack, which I didn't put there, it's my mistake. But all-out attack means you can do up to 4 different attacks per activation. So if you want, you can shoot 4 times per activation on light units. Quite impressive. You can do 4 times against heavy units, which is going to be even harder for those guys. The only thing that, from my understanding how it works, you cannot do so many times is the impact, because impact for a vehicle you can do once. You cannot do impact, go back, impact, no, it doesn't work. You do 1 impact attack per activation, which is fine because it's absolutely devastating. Chain of command means it has an aura of 12 inches of commands. Okay, very good. It's heavy, obviously a behemoth. It is a commander, so again, can be your commander, not at the smallest scale of the game. Discipline of 7 is quite fine. And then it has some special rule that only him has. The most important one, and I will start with this, is Corrosive Fumes X, which is actually quite far. Corrosive Fume 5, okay. Corrosive Fume 5, it means that when you finish moving, every single unit within 5 inches, which is not so small, becomes disordered, except Automatas. That's it. Like, there is no roll, no nothing. You finish your movement, enemy tanks, enemy infantry, I don't know, even flyers. Like if at some point we have overcrafts or something, even them, from the corrosive fumes of this thing, they will become disordered, and that's quite not something you want to have. It really reduces their effectiveness. So that is really, really good. The other thing that it has, and we'll talk about it in the next ship as well, it is obfuscating 5. So basically what it means that you and people that charge along you will be shrouded. So you are always considered as being in cover. Just if this thing was not scary enough, just charging you down. That is insanely good. This thing, I don't know, it's a ton of points, like it's so many points, but it seems like it will be very funny to play with and against, because it's very tough, defense 4, damage limit 16, it is going to be in covered, it's going to make people around himself start to be disordered, and I think just from having this death roller charging you, even without calling it corrosive fume, just should make you panic. You should have a panic test. Talking about panic test, now that we've seen like its special rules, yeah, and when it dies, there is a little roll. You can explode. You can really have an atomic explosion basically, or you can just collapse on himself. And except if it absolutely explodes in an atomic explosion, basically, the carcass of the landship is gonna stay as a destroyed piece of terrain, kind of like a blockable terrain, and that's a crazy, crazy rule. And I love that you leave these giant landships on the terrain once they are destroyed. One thing that is quite important, some units can garrison destroyed landships. So it can be important. For example, there is one of the result of Spectacular Demise that makes you move forward with the inertia kinda, and then you stop. And this is important because it means where this giant building that it can be garrisoned by elite infantry is going to be on the terrain. So it's really very cinematic, and I love that. I will not go through all these small details, but let's have a look at the weapons. You can shoot at light, so basically infantry, cavalry, etc., from 10 to 20 inches, so quite close, but it's okay. Not so many dices, though. It goes from when you're at full power, it's 12, and it's like quite linear. Though they are suppressive, so if you make discipline test, the enemy has -1. So yeah, quite good when you have infantry around that you want to make sure they don't double charge you at the end. And the thing that I really love is that it's a spawn weapon. So in the reaction step, you can make an opportunity fire for free with this guy whenever an enemy unit comes next to you. So you basically charge this guy down the middle, ideally of enemy infantry, and they're gonna be maybe disordered. Whenever they come to charge you, maybe, first of all, they're gonna be disordered, and on top of that, before they can start to punch you and stuff, the infantry, because infantry can be naughty, they're gonna get shot by this guy, which again is suppressive, so maybe they will fail their discipline test. Absolutely lovely. Good defense for this guy that actually needs it against some of the very powerful anti-tank infantry that can charge you down. Its main gun, though, is against tanks. I'm not sure, I suppose it's this cannon there that causes this because it's a good attack, 1632, so you can shoot quite far with this guy, almost artillery, 5, 10, 15, so you start at 15 dices, which is quite huge. Let's remember, you allowed attack, you can attack 4 times, up to 4 times if you want, that's huge. Anti-air attack, oh, you're not so good at anti-air. Luckily for now, there are not so many air units in the game, like almost none, so that's okay. And finally, the main thing you want to do with this guy, you want to charge, impact attack. It doesn't degrade that much, but at the best, you're gonna impact someone at 18 with penetrating. So first of all, 18 dice is there. It's not many guys that will appreciate it at all. And on top of that, penetrating needs that whenever you have some extra hits, let's call it, that wouldn't breach the enemy's defense, those extra hits are converted into a dead model. Like, we consider that you reach the next level of defense. This is basically the most powerful rule that you can have on a weapon, period. The only difference is if it's a large unit with multiple health, like very large models such as the Landship, it doesn't kill it instantly, just makes another point of damage, which is almost the same. But yeah, incredible rule, and of course this Death Roller, you want this guy to be a distraction carnifex. It can do the job. It's a lot of points, and maybe you want another command unit because this guy is just going to go forward very, very fast, but damn, it can do the job. And then you have my even preferred unit, which is the Wutai Landship. Basically the same defense as you can see, same things, chain of command, a little bit less attacks as you can see there. Same corrosive fume, Same obfuscating, so you are in cover, or you are shrouded yourself, but there is more chance that you will have units around you to benefit from this, because this guy is basically an artillery piece. Do note that it explodes a bit further, because probably it has more munition and stuff. But this guy has the same light gun, with shorter range though, because probably it's flamethrowers from what I see, okay, but it's still the same. Suppressive and sponson, okay, but it's also torrent, so you shoot less far, but the enemy can never be concealed, even if he has a shroud, even if he's in the terrain. And it never gains a defensive bonus for taking cover or being in a building, because you're basically a flamethrower. Flame weapons are not as good as shooting the enemy, but it's very much better at countercharging enemies being sponsored, and yeah, it's brilliant. The main cannons are the same, so it's probably, again, this cannon. And then you have a second attack that is very interesting. So basically, you're gonna have a choice at this point. When you shoot, because remember you have all-out attack 3, you're gonna have a choice of when you target a ranged heavy units, let's say at 20 inches, you're gonna have the choice of using either profile, because they're both gonna be in range. And you have benefits and inconvenience with both. The super heavy artillery is usually what you want to do, because sometimes the enemy is too far, so at 38 inches, this is the only thing that will be in range, no questions. And sometimes it has a minimum range of 6, this artillery, so the enemy will be too close, and then, okay, whatever, I don't do this because it's too close, I have to use the normal cannon, which is still like 15 dice. The huge benefits that you can get on this weapon is, first of all, it's devastating. So whenever like you apply damage, any excess hits, it's another point of damage. So against large units, it's going to be the same as penetrating. It's a little bit less good against things like heavy tanks, but it's going to be the same again against infantry, because 1 point of damage is usually going to be a dead model anyway. It is indirect, so sometimes it's better not to shoot at units that are not in your line of sight, because then it's going to be considered as having a cover, as being concealed, and you cannot use this artillery for opportunity fire, obviously. Usually you don't really want to be in opportunity fire with this guy. You're just going to be shooting, and you're going to shoot with devastating. Most of the time, I will say, you want to use the artillery. First of all, the enemy is often going to be in the short range with this guy, between 6 and 25. That's great. You don't need to reload, unlike, for example, the Crown super heavy artillery, which can only shoot once in a while. This guy, you can shoot 3 times with the artillery. That's why he has this auto-loader there. And only when the enemy is within 6 inches, you have your secondary gun. Do note that it takes you any anti-air capacity. If the enemy has airships or little helicopters, you have 0 defense against them. You cannot even try to shoot at them. So be careful with that. When the game is going to start to have a lot of air units, it's okay. You're going to have some anti-air bikes that we'll see in a second, and you can have them around. They're going to be shrouded because you have obfuscating shroud, and they're going to be safe, and they're going to cover you from enemy aircraft, so that's going to be fine. Of course, the impact is much weaker, but if you start to be at the point where you want to impact the enemy instead of shooting at them, it means things have gone very wrong, and you probably can say goodbye for your Wutai if the enemy starts to charge with like 10 units of anti-tank cavalry or something like this. Overall, these two landships have very different roles. Probably if you can magnetize them, it's going to be the best, even though, in the how to expand, I recommend another set if you really want to make massive battles, and having one Wutai to shoot from the back with your artillery and anti-air guns, while you have a Laoshan charging forward with your cavalry, your jet bikes, and your lines and stuff, is probably going to be a crazy fun gameplay to practice in the game. If I have to choose only one, probably I would keep the Wutai, because I would like my landship to survive as long as possible. That's maybe just me, but I like in the fluff when my commander stays alive, and this guy is just going to stay in the back, being almost unkillable, shooting at almost 40 inches, all game long with very powerful weapons, covering your artillery units as well. I mean, what is not to like in that? Do note it's also a bit cheaper, but it's probably a little bit weaker in raw power that compared to the Laoshan, but I prefer the gameplay of the Wutai. Plus it looks brilliant. Looks like a moving castle. Alright, a datasheet that might not look like much, but it's very important. It's basically like your entire army resolves. Again, those guys, the green banner platoon, the Empire's basic infantry. Those guys are brilliant. They are extremely cheap, 35 at the minimum scale, so 4 guys. And 8 guys cost 35. So you can really spam them, and if you pay 90 points, which is nothing in a 2000 points army, you can have 24 of those, again depending on the point scale, etc. But still, that's a lot of wounds to put on the table. They have only defense 2 and 1 wound each, of course, but they have a very interesting rule, which is resilient front, which means that when they get shot from the front, they have 1 defense more. So it goes from 2 hits to kill 1 guy to 3 hits, and it changes the statistics completely. It gives you like what, 50% more resilience. Like, that is huge for a unit that you're gonna have so many of. You always want to be shot from the front, and this is the role of these guys. They are your tanky units. They're not there to shoot. They're not there to be very powerful. We're gonna take a look, but they don't shoot far anyway. They want to be in front. They want to be the front line, and they are your human shield wall because they are very cheap. There is a ton of them, and they actually, if they get shot from the front, they can hold a lot. Like, when you put their resilience compared to their point cost, these guys are insane. 24 models for 90 points. Like, if we were playing on Tabletop Simulator or something, just spam those guys. Spam 5 units of maximum size of those guys. It's gonna be more than 100 stands, and it's gonna be less than 500 points. That is insane. It's insanely cheap. This game would be unbalanced if anybody had the patience to make like 200 stands of those guys, because you don't have time, you don't have the firepower to deal with all of them. Just too many guys. So those guys are incredible. Always try to bring a lot of them. They will not kill your enemy, because usually like they have 4 dices when you have the minimum size, and it goes to a crazy 12. It's not insane. When you are in short range, so within 3 inches, which means you're gonna get charged, it goes a little bit up. You get +2 extra dice, and the melee is basically the same without the point blank capacity. So their offensive power prowess is not insane, though it's not negligible for the point cost. But what's crazy is that they have defense 3 for a unit that is so cheap. Really, like, those guys are your main frontline defenders. And all the other units, we're gonna hear a lot in the later part of the video, me saying like, yeah, it's a little bit glass cannon, it's a little bit glass cannon. Yeah, this is the anvil to make sure all your glass cannons can do what they need to do. Then you have the green banner command platoon. So in the picture there is these resin guys that come from the Singapore starter set. You don't have this guy, but it doesn't mean you cannot have green banner command platoon. Just put some flags around that you can have in your bases and say, okay, this is my command platoon, because there's going to be 1 stand that has flags going around. So it's really easy to make even with just the starter sets. Much more expensive, as you can see. It's basically the same unit, same number of models, 8, 16, 24, but much more expensive. What do they gain? Well, basically one thing, they gain chain of command, which means that you gain +1 discipline to everyone within 6 inches. Okay, that's good. And especially it unlocks you new battle groups. So at some point you're not gonna want to spam the landships, of course, because they're so expensive. You're gonna want to have a little unit of 8 of those guys as your commander. You're gonna pay +40 points for a minimum sized unit, just for the privilege of basically gaining chain of command. Do note that from what I read in these rules, it's not the stand specifically, it's the entire unit that becomes a command. And so if you make a huge pack of 24 of them, yes, you're gonna pay basically +100 points, which is huge, but then you can put them in a line, and everybody within any point of this unit gains the +1 to the discipline. And discipline is quite important. We need to practice a bit more the game, but it really seems to be a very important part of the game. So this is the reason why you might want 24 stands of green banner commands, even though it's very expensive. It's to really spread out the stands and make sure that, first of all, your officer is going to not die so fast, and second of all, that you can really spread out this aura of command all around. So that is great. Now we're gonna start to have a look at their glass cannons. Well, is it really glass cannons? Well, a little bit, because you can see the same cost, exactly the same cost as the green banner, same defense 2 and damage limit 1, except they don't have resilient front, so they die fast, they will not increase their defense, and there's half of them. It's, instead of being 8-16-24, it's 4-8-12, and that's going to be the case for most of the Empire infantry. So that's something to take into consideration. Though one thing that I will say is that the green banner doesn't have resilient front when they are in the building, because it doesn't pile up, obviously. While the green banner flame teams, if you put them in the building, they will get the +1 defense, and it's quite cumulative, and those are the glass cannons that you might want to put in a building, in defensive position, etc. While the green banners, you are quite fine with having them just holding the line in the plains. What weapons do they have? They have flamethrowers, obviously, so quite more efficient, as you can see, same range, but it's 7, 11, 15, but especially it's torrent, so no hiding, you cannot be concealed, you cannot take the cover from a building, so quite good at killing this, and it's suppressive. So whenever the enemy gets a suppression test after getting this, well, those guys are going to get -1 to their discipline. So yeah, it starts to be quite good. And finally, it has a rule, Storming Party, which means that you can make a garrison move action while you're moving, and that's good. So you can move, like, get into a garrison and try to survive. And when you make a storm a building, which is like you have an enemy inside, the enemy does not get a defensive advantage. So they're really good at shooting or just storming a building and getting the enemy infantry out of there. Because not having the defensive advantage when you're defending a building, it's quite hard. And yeah, if you have, like, these guys are your building cleaners for sure. This is their one role. They're quite good at this. They're very good anti-infantry, anti-hidden infantry, in a forest, in a cover, in a ruin, in a building. Those guys will get the enemy infantry out very efficiently for the point cost. Then the rocket teams, those guys, basically the same defensive profile and the same cost as the flame guys, okay. They have very different role, as you can guess. They carry these huge rocket launchers, which look very interesting. They look like these Chinese rockets that you can see from some of the movies, like Mulan, for example, the first one that comes to my head, with the little guy with the munition behind. All right. They can shoot if they want at infantry, but it's really not why you buy, but they technically can. It is suppressive, because when someone shoots at you with explosive rockets, you might get a little bit shaken on your discipline. But what you really want is to shoot at heavy units, because those are a very cheap infantry unit that is very good at 12 dices when you have a huge pack, or 4 dices when you're small. They're very good at shooting at enemy tanks, which is very rare for infantry. That is amazing. And that's where we're going, you don't even have to expose yourself, because, and that's a huge thing, these attacks have indirect, which means you shoot the rockets above the buildings, above whatever, and it falls down. The enemy tank that just needs to be within 30 inches, it's a huge range, you don't even need to see this guy, okay, it's going to be concealed, and then everything falls on him. That is absolutely insane. Though, two things, those main attacks, they have reload, so whenever you want to shoot at infantry or tanks, you cannot try not to turn like as a machine gun. You need to you have the reloading status after you shoot, so you need to either use a card, either use a capacity, or use an action to remove the reload status, something quite important. So you cannot reload, aim, and shoot in the same activation. That's not gonna work, so something to take into consideration. And they are cumbersome, which means that if they make a double time, so basically moving fast, like to double their range, you gain reloading. So you cannot make double time and next turn aim and shoot. If you make a double time, you're gonna have to reload and shoot, and that's a huge thing. So you really want to maybe have a transport for them, or try to find a way to get them in position in the middle ground as soon as you can, and then they're basically artillery. If you can shoot directly, you will not have the enemy being concealed, which is great, because since you can't aim, the negative capacity are going to start to accumulate. But maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you don't care about aiming. You don't care about being indirect, because you know you're going to shoot with a negative penalty, because the enemy is going to have all the benefit penalty as you're going to have no positive, and you don't care. you're just gonna stay hidden behind a building with a huge pack of 12 of those, and they're gonna be an artillery, and they're just gonna shoot turn after turn after turn without aiming, without getting direct line of sight, just being basically anti-tank artillery. And they're great at this. They're terrible in melee. They have a non-reload attack against aircrafts, which is interesting. If something happens, they can be like emergency anti-air. And that's about it. Love those guys. Don't consider them as super short-range artillery anti-tank. That's absolutely not what they are. They are basically infantry-sized artillery. We continue with the Jezzail team. Be very careful with the Jezzail. They are not on the infantry sprues. They are on the armored sprues, as you have seen in the unboxing. So something to take into consideration. Those guys are another category entirely. As you can see, it's a different price. Small unit is 80 points. It goes all the way up to 210. So already you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's very elite infantry. And they only have defense 2, damage limit 1. So those are very glass cannons. They are not even infantry. They're technically field guns. So you remember when you build your lists, they are not in the same category as infantry. So many times they cannot be bolstered, something to take into consideration, and they are field guns. It's basically the Empire equivalent of the Drake field gun for the Crown. So what do they do with these guys? Why are they so expensive? Well, they have a few extra rules that I would need to tell. They can move or fire. So if it even just begun to move, it cannot shoot. So you cannot even, like, it's not even double time. Just moving, you cannot shoot anymore. You have to choose. So maybe do a double time. I don't know, because if you do a double time, you have reload as well. You have cumbersome, sorry, as well. So if you make a double time, you're gonna have to reload next time. So it's very, very much like an artillery, this guy, even more. They are resilient front, which is great. It means that they are going to be more resilient from the front, which when you pay this much, yeah, probably you hope to not just be obliterated by the first anti-infantry weapon that aims your way. Their main defense, though, is their range. They can shoot at 36 inches, which is basically artillery range at this point, and that's what you want to do with them. And then you look at their capacity, and you're like, wow, wait a second, why do I pay so much for something that will throw like 3 dices? Well, this is the reason why. Precision. When a model is destroyed, the attacking general, so you, when you play them, you can choose which model is destroyed. And of course, you're gonna use those guys as snipers, and you're just gonna go around and kill the enemy officers. You remember when we can have some officers specifically in some commands, like you can have some surgeons, you can have some guys that gives you bonus, commanding officers that give you bonus to rediscipline. Well, those guys make them pop, turn after turn. Because 3 dices, you're probably, especially since you are penetrating, you just need to make 1 hit and you kill a guy with penetrating. Quite easy to do. You kill a guy and you choose which guy is killed. Even if you make a single hit, you don't even care. They can have defense 5. You will kill a guy. And then you choose, okay, this guy actually, and then of course you choose the officer, and then they lose their bonus. That's really good against infantry. It's even better on tanks when they have commanding tanks, because no matter the formation, they can have Galahad heavy tanks, medium tanks for the Crown. You shoot with your 3 dices, you do 1 hit. It's enough because you're penetrating. You destroy the enemy tank and you choose, okay, you know what? It was your commanding tank all the way in the back at 36 inches. So yes, they're extremely fragile for the point cost. Yes, they can die very fast, but you basically get a chance, just like this, to one-shot any model in the enemy army. And that's what you pay so much. Do you know that I put here, it's a little relic or bonus, warlord trait, whatever you want to call this. It's something that you can pay, it's at the end of the orbit, and you can buy this for your Empire forces. And this is really something you might want to do. You pay plus 20 points, so can increase the price. And it means that this unit, you don't need to activate it and gain on the lookout. It starts with the on the lookout status. It basically means that you don't care if you start first or second or whatever. The enemy, you put them somewhere like close to the center, like probably on top of a building on your side of the map, etc. And they start with on the lookout. There are other units that might enjoy this, but I cannot not enjoy the idea of just having those guys on top of a building, starting the game on the lookout. The enemy has the initiative, and you look at your big pack of snipers on top of the building, you look at the enemy, and you're like, okay, your move, tell me which unit is gonna move and trigger my on the lookout. So it's really, really a great unit. and very expensive. Probably a bit oppressive if you start to have too much of them, but they don't have a raw firepower. But if they're the fact that they can really target a specific model and then everybody in the unit will lose the sergeant, so -1 to the discipline, really can change a lot of things. And then finally the Bulnabang's winged infantry, which by the way I checked in the fluff and they are not Koreans, they have been built in cooperation with the Koreans, it's Korean equipment, but they are actually from Thailand, so first Thai units in the game, like in Dystopian Age, so yay! Those guys are more expensive, like they're 45 going up to 115, okay. Very, very fragile, again, glass cannons, we expected it. Defense 2, damage limit 1, wow, not much, not much. Those guys are bulky, so it's very difficult to put them in transports, but whatever, you don't have transports yet for the Empire, so it doesn't matter that much. They are interesting. They have corrosive fumes, and we remember this rule from the Laoshan. It means that when they finish within 2 inches, because of the 2 here, within 2 inches of any unit, even tanks or whatever, this enemy becomes disoriented. So quite good, you have your little pocket gas and you throw your bottles of alchemical whatever, and the enemy becomes disoriented automatically. Great. They are irregular, so the formation is a little bit different, more flexible, let's say, and they have soar X, which means that when they move, instead of moving, they can decide to soar, to fly basically. Their speed goes from 4 to 7, and they basically, of course they fly, so they ignore terrain, they can fly over rivers, over tanks, whatever. Though they become visible, their size becomes 10, and they become aerial. So if the enemy has, for example, some anti-air units, until we arrive summer 2025 with air units, it means that the entire guns of the enemy that are just waiting for a target and that don't have any target, you're going to be their target. If they are on the lookout, they're going to trigger for you because you're the only target they can shoot out with their anti-air guns. So winged infantry, and the same, the Spitfire Rocketeers for the Crown, they are the only guys that can be aerial currently in the game. So be very careful when you trigger this. Yes, it's good, it's great, you're faster, you ignore terrain, only benefits, but you become aerials. And until we have other aerial units to take the flag for you, be careful with that. They also have Vanguard, so it means that this unit, like before the first turn, they can make a free double time, so 8 inches movement, that is great. And now we take a look at their weapons. They have fine anti-infantry weapon, 357 suppressive. I say fine, it's actually even a bit sad. They have great anti-air weapons, 4, 6, or up to 8, 10. You get the difference of +2 if you are at point blank, so within 3 inches. So they're very good at, I don't know, attacking aircrafts or something, helicopters if we get them at some point. And they have also good melee, 4, 8, 12 that are suppressive. Currently, I would say they don't have a role. Like, they are great anti-air, but there are so few anti-air units in the game. Maybe some enemy infantry, air infantry as well, but they will not fly, they will not soar next to you if you are on the lookout within 6 inches of them, because they know what you're going to try to do and they will not let you do that. They are very good for capturing objectives, being very fast. This, yes. Having a pack of 4 of those guys just to be on the flank, being a little harasser is great. If you can use them on Vanguard and then soaring, or just going around, going through forest and impassable terrain and trying to hunt enemy artillery and stuff, okay, that's a role, I can see that. For now, I would rather have more ground infantry than massing the Bulnabangs. You remember there is one of the formation where you can spam those guys. I hardly see in which situation I spam Bulnabangs instead of Green Banner. Like, I just don't see that. If you buy them, if you want to have, for example, you buy this starter set and another box, you will have 12 models. I would maybe recommend this enhanced alchemy bonus. It's 50 points, that's huge, makes you, it's very expensive, but it basically increases the range of your corrosive fumes by +2. So you go from corrosive fumes 2 to corrosive fumes 4. If you start to have a large unit of soaring guys just flying around, they are irregular, so you can just really spread them around, and every single stand of these 12 stands has a bubble of 4 inches, and anybody they end within 4 inches of is gonna start to be disoriented. That can really put a huge wrench in your enemy's plan, if that is the correct English way to say that. But that is a very fun combo, though the enemy will see it coming, probably, because they don't go that fast, even with Vanguard, even with Soaring. But if you do manage to do that, it can be really fun if you succeed, and very powerful. Now we go with the Jianhuren Terracota Automata. Those guys I really like. They are infantry, okay, but they are heavy. So when you shoot at those guys, you need to use your anti-tank weapons. So, for example, we've seen the green banners or the crown rifles, etc. Those guys have only anti-light. So you can shoot at those golems with your rifles. It's not gonna do anything. You will never do them a single point of damage. I absolutely love that. Though when you shoot them with anti-tank weapons, they have defense 2, damage limit 2. So yeah, they're expensive, not that much expensive if I'm being honest, for the resilience they have by the benefit of being heavy. Most of their defense come from the fact they are heavy units. They move at 4. They have only melee, only their giant spears, but damn do they punch. They have shock, so when they charge they're gonna have, shock is, yeah, it's this. When they charge, I checked, shock is against light units. So those guys are incredible hunters of light infantry that don't have heavy weapons, because you're just gonna charge at those poor guys with their rifles, and they're gonna shoot at you. They're not gonna do ever a single point of damage, so they're probably gonna just try to run away. And if you do catch them, you have incredible firepower. Like in melee, you have 8 dices for the smallest size unit. So they're incredible. They are automatas, so they always succeed at disciplines. Great. You cannot use commands though, but whatever. You cannot control objectives, so you just charge them at the enemy. And they are pioneers, and this goes well with the little bonus. Like, it means that you treat difficult terrain and dense terrain both as open terrain. They just charge through the forest, they charge through the mud. They're just giant robots, and they charge at you like giant terracotta automatas. Like, the concept is great. If you want to have them a little bonus, there is tempered sturgeonium blades, which is basically, but no, it's a special command that you cannot do on this guy. I wanted to double up this on the anti-infantry part, but they cannot receive commands. Hey, no, I just noticed. So maybe on the Bulnabangs you want that to really make them charging. But then anyways, you gain devastating. And to be honest, I was looking at where to put this bonus, tempered sturgeonium blade, this artifact. I thought it would be fine for these guys. But to be honest, 40 points, and then you have to spend a card to just gaining devastating, so maybe +1 damage. Yeah, not so great anyway. So let me remove that, and let's just consider that's a great unit on its own. Like, just giant Terminator Chinese terracotta automata units. Love the concept. And yeah, do bring a lot of those guys, probably in smaller packs, to hunt down the enemies, because you don't care. They cannot be broken from discipline. They're just incredible units. Now, one of our favorite units in our French community, we call them the artillery bikes, the Tanshe artillery chariots, which used to have in the starter set, in their special rules, move and fire, which move or fire, which killed their unit entirely. And now it's very different, and I absolutely love those guys. They cost 70 to 180 depending how many you take, 4, 8 or 12. They are light units, cavalry units, so they can be killed by anti-infantry firepower, so be careful with that. They have some impact attacks, which is fine if there is enemy infantry. Like, you can, if you have a big pack, try to make a shock. It's going to be 11 dices. I would recommend to just run away if you could, but you can if you want to finish off an infantry unit and clear an objective. It's not impossible. It's not very low unit against infantry specifically. But their main weapon is that they have artillery, and that's crazy. It's indirect, minimum range of 4, so you cannot shoot at a guy just in front of you. So maybe it's not a great idea to charge, indeed. But then they shoot from 26 inches, which is quite far. They move 8 inches, so effective threat range of 34. Not bad, not bad. And then they have fair firepower for this range and this price. Like, I mean, yes, it's not crazy. Against light units, it's going to be 4, 8, 12, okay, with indirect. And against tanks, not great either, but 3, 6, 9. If you want to shoot, well, not so great either, but depends on what you shoot. Maybe you want to shoot at enemy artillery as well. Great counter artillery, these guys. They can really go and hunt them. You can have a big pack of 12 of those, and if you shoot, for example, at a crown like heavy artillery, I'm not sure the crown is going to win this fight, because yes, they are more powerful, but those guys, there is a lot of them, and they're quite cheap. They have defense 2, damage limit 2, so yeah, infantry, like basically cavalry score, so not great, but they're quite cheap. They don't have very low amount of damage, and you can just move them around. They're going to be very hard to catch with anything shorter than cavalry, because they're going to really keep moving and shooting, which is exactly how you imagine them behaving on the field of battle. And they have a good range, and you can hide them behind a building and start shooting, and next turn they run with 8 inches behind another building and they shoot again. They don't need to reload. They have a good weapon. I really enjoy those guys, and I think you will very much enjoy playing with them as well. Your opponent will really get tired of those guys, and it might trigger him to put some units on the lookout to try to catch them while they go from one cover to the other. And when he does that, just stay in cover and shoot at those guys that are in the lookout with those Tanshes, with their indirect gun. Brilliant unit, seems to be a huge thorns in the feet of your opponents. And then there is the other variant that you will probably not want to play for a while. It's the Biao Flak launcher. Basically the same, costs a little bit less for now, but you understand why. It has an anti-light unit that is really not brilliant, like it's for what you pay there. It's okay, like you can shoot at infantry, it's fine. Same shocking attack. And their great thing is their amazing anti-air. It's 6, 10, 14 and up to 24 inches. So whenever there's gonna be some fighter planes and bombers going across the map with the updates coming probably spring, summer 2025, those are gonna be your anti-air guns. They can be very fast, you can move them, go on the lookout, and just have these very mobile, great anti-air turrets. Until then, not so great. If you can, magnetize those, and yeah, that's the best I can tell you. These guys will be your main anti-air guns in a year, basically, or 6 months. But for now, you really prefer the Tanshe, like without even a question. But at some point, these are going to be your main anti-air guns, and mobile ones at top of that, so that's really good. Tongshi Lion Automatas, or also Automatas, the same as the golems, though they're not infantry, they're cavalry, and they are not heavy, they are light. So very different role there. You're like, okay, sure, very different role. Still defense 2, damage limit 2, but it means they're way more fragile, of course. Their Automatas the same, pioneer, so they ignore difficult terrains, perfect. What do? They're more expensive, 90 and going up to 235, so very expensive. You're like, whoa, what do I get for this? They're not very resilient. They're not heavy like the golems, and they're not super fast at speed 6. Why would I take them? Well, because if you do connect your charge, those guys pack a punch. They have a shooting attack against infantry, which is really good, 6, 10, 14. With torrent and suppressive, so no cover for the enemy because it's basically a flamethrower, and suppressive, so they might probably lose their discipline test. Brilliant. And they have good melee. Like when I say good melee, it's 5, 10, 15, and they get +2 each time if they target heavy. So those guys will burn the infantry with flamethrowers and then charge tank and just wreck the tanks. Like really, even a small units of 4 of those guys will bring 7 dices against tanks, and even against crown heavy tanks, that is going to be a lot of damage. I know they have high defense and high everything, but damn, those guys with the point cost can really bully enemy tanks. It's difficult to play them because they're not so fast. They are quite fragile, very fragile for the point cost actually. Maybe you probably want to hide them somewhere. They're size 2, so you cannot even hide them behind infantry. They are too tall, they will be shot over the infantry. So you really need to try to put them on the flank behind buildings and really have them as basically prowling panthers or something, jumping out of cover, jumping from behind a building and just threatening your opponents to get close to them. If you were to buy them some nice artifact, I found the countercharge artifact that is basically a special command, and again it's an automata, so I made a mistake. They cannot get those things. That's really a shame because on this really would have been Nice. Well, Dompi, like, I don't see any other unit that would like to do a counter charge that is not an automata in like part of the Empire rooster. You have another unit which I really like as well. It's not a wrecker against anti-tank, but first of all, it's cheaper. It has the same defensive profile. It's the Ruishi Lion Automata. And the thing that I really like is that it's it's the same wolf type of unit that also has some rockets on the back that have lock-on, so you can really use them with great opportunity fire against aircrafts. It's even better than the other bike because you can just stay on the lookout and use those guys as, yeah, basically entire turret. And that's it. Like, I just love the model. I love the concept. Don't build it right now. It wouldn't do much. Like, it's the other unit is much better. But maybe for now build them like this because it looks great, even if you proxy them as Tongshis. And whenever there's gonna be some planes going around, you can use them like this. I love the little tactical rock that they has there. Great entire turret. It's how you're gonna play it. It's quite fast. You move it first turn, you put it somewhere, and you put it on the lookout, and then you shoot with this thing. You're gonna have lock on, 5, 8, 11 dices, or even 5 dices. You're gonna do some damage to enemy aircrafts, and then you reload and you go on the lookout again, and you have lock on, so your little missiles will hit the enemy planes effectively. Love those guys. They have cumbersome, so be careful with that. And I will not go too much into the detail because it's going to be a year from when we're going to have aircrafts. We're going to talk about it again, but consider this as one of the very, very powerful anti-air weapons of the Empire. And now we go with the Fangun medium tank, and I'm sorry, but there is only the view from the back of the tank. So here it's the engine, it goes forward like to this direction, to the top right. Okay. The Wheel of Death is good. It's a little bit more underwhelming than, for example, the heavy tanks, medium tanks of the Crown, but still it's a very, very good tank. So 110 going up to 285 from 246, okay. Speed 7, okay. It's Pioneer, so again, it can go through the mud, through the forest. Great, great. So it doesn't want to be in the open field facing off the enemy's heavy tanks. It wants to be a little bit flanking and going around through the forest and stuff, because he really doesn't mind that. Defense 3, damage limit of 3, so it's a tank. It doesn't die that fast. Good for him. It's heavy, obviously. Anti-infantry weapons being 4, 8, 12 is okay. But if you use the cannons against enemy tanks, which is probably what you want to do, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, from 10 to 30 inches. So that's a good anti-tank gun. It's probably one of your main anti-tank weapon for the Empire, period. It is a good weapon. Impact 369, so not so insane for a unit that looks like a giant death roller. But yeah, you will want some tank at some point to hold the line with your Empire, and the Fangun is a very good choice. Very good against tanks, and also can do a punch against enemy infantry units if you don't have any other targets. Again, it has Pioneers. Make use of it, because enemy tanks will not want to go through their difficult terrain, and this is your advantage. Don't go on the plane and charge them head on. Do use your unusual shape to go through different sides and try to get them from the flank or something. Then the Yanshu flame tank, and we can see the face of those tanks, a bit cheaper, 100 going up to 260 for the same number of tanks, 246. Speed 8, so it goes a bit faster actually. The range though, good that it goes faster, because the range maximum 8 inches, so very, very different role. Not great at all against tanks, but this thing obliterates infantry. Even 2 tanks will throw 7 dices, torrent suppressive, Pioneers, so you can really go in the forest and burn the enemy infantry away from the forest. When you have a pack of 5 or 6 of them, you're just gonna burn entire regiments at a time. And since this guy really has one purpose, which is to burn infantry at almost point blank, and that's the main thing he does, he doesn't really want to shoot at enemy tanks. I really recommend, when you make a big pack of those guys, like for example 260 point, pay the extra 15 points and get a Forlorn Hope bonus, which gives you a free double time maneuver as if you had Vanguard. And this guy really wants it, because it means turn 1, it can make 16 inches straight and put it in the forest, put it behind a building, hide this guy, because it is tanky, but doesn't want to just charge at the enemy, because if you charge an enemy gun line, you will spend a few turns before you are in range to shoot at them. So really use the terrain to your advantage with the Empire tanks. Give it Forlorn Hope to this guy. It works for this guy as well. If you want to give Forlorn Hope to these tanks, it works as well. Do that, and then you will make the most out of this unit. Now, only 3 units to go. Come on guys, we're doing this until the end. The Jindouyoun Steambikes. Those guys, first of all, I love the design, and I really like what those guys do. They're amazing, cheap anti-infantry units. They're very fragile though, extremely fragile. Defense 2, damage limit 1, so they die very fast, but you do have quite a few of those, it's not like a tank. For 75 points, you have 5 stands, so that is quite okay. Speed of 10, yes, you heard that right, 10. So if you give those guys Fallen Hope, they do 20 inches. So having 15 Steambikes doing 20 inches turn 1 can be threatening for your opponents, and it's going to be like 210 points if you make the max size unit, okay? They have a special capacity which is hover, which means they treat difficult terrain and water terrain as open terrain. So that's good. They can literally fly over a lake or river if you have. They can fly over mud, but they cannot consider forest as open terrain. Be very careful with the difference with pioneers. Pioneers is like these very heavy golems or tanks that go through the forest. Those guys fly, so they ignore the mud, they ignore the ground basically. But if there is a forest, they don't ignore it at all. Like, remember what happened to these stormtroopers in Return of the Jedi. Like, they will not want to be in a forest. Their weapons are nothing to scoff at. Of course, they are anti-infantry from 7 to 16 inches. 16 inches means that many infantry will not be able to shoot you back. They are great skirmishers. 5, 10, 15 dices. Okay, really good. And even if you have some enemy tank units that you get from the flank because you're very fast and you shoot them from the flank and they have these negative benefits. Probably there is another name for negative benefits. But yeah, if they have this, you still have 3, 5, 7 dices, which means that on a on a dime, you can use them as anti-tank, even though you should absolutely use them as anti-infantry. That's their main role. So great, fast skirmishing units. The Crown Cavalry wants to charge. You can really bait the enemy Crown Cavalry at 16 inches and just obliterate those guys. Like, just go at 16 inches, although they can charge you even, but go at 16 inches from the other side of the river, which they will have a hard time crossing, and shoot at the enemy cavalry, and yeah, they're gonna have a really bad time, and you're gonna have fun. And next we have the Fengbao heavy launcher, the artillery. This guy launches like globes of alchemical fire. So, fun fact, like fun idea. Defense 2, damage limit 2, so it's quite fragile for the point cost, because for 120 points you have only 2 of those guys. Ouch. They're cumbersome, so of course you don't want to move. Cannot make charge in case you want it. And if you lose a close quarter battle, which you will, because look at your stat line, you will be immediately annihilated. So very fragile, but what do you get in exchange? Well, it's an artillery. So you can shoot against both heavy and light unit. It's torrent, because it's like alchemical balls of fire or gas or whatever. Suppressive, obviously. Minimum range of 10. So quite like there will be a point where your enemy will start to charge and you will not run fast enough and they will get you. So be very careful with that. They are mostly against infantry, 6, 10, 14. Quite good, actually, quite good. They don't need to reload, so you can shoot turn after enemy. Great. They are indirect, though, so if you shoot an enemy you don't see, they're going to be considered as concealed. Alright. And they can be used against tank, even though it's not their main role. You really want to use the Fengbaos as anti-infantry units. Expensive. Quite expensive, actually. The fact that they are torrent and suppressive makes them really good at cleaning infantry that is hiding in buildings, and that would be, I think, their main role. Infantry in cover, saying like, yeah, I'm in the forest, I'm in the building. Those guys, just drop 14 dices on them, torrent and suppressive. They're gonna not stay in the building very long at all. But if you want to do something that the rest of your army doesn't do so good, because you have already flamethrowers and stuff, then take a look at the Lei Heavy Artillery, which is same stat lines, a little bit cheaper, And what it does, it shoots further away. It has these 3 cannons that are set to shoot like in a series, like half a second apart. Quite cool to imagine that. And you can use them as anti-infantry, but that's not what you want to do. You want to use them as anti-tank because it's 6, 10, 14. It's not indirect. Be very careful. You need to expose those guys a little bit on a hill. I don't think you can put them on a building, but if you have a custom terrain with some walls or something, those guys need to see their targets, so that's why they're a bit cheaper. But damn, that's one of your main anti-tank weapons that you have in the entire game, or entire artillery or anything. These guys are heavy, by the way. They can go and hunt enemy heavy artillery or heavy tanks easy. They are also going to be one of your main weapons to try to shoot down the enemy landships. I love those guys, and to be honest, if you can, magnetize as always, but if I had to choose, I would either do 2 Sanlei and 2 Fengbaos, or even 4 Sanleis, just to really have an answer when your opponent brings a landship, because 4 of those guys shooting turn after turn after turn at the landship, that's gonna be a lot. Okay, we arrive near the end, and last question, you want to expand beyond that, like you have this box, what do you buy after this? The first answer will be to buy the Laoshan battle group, because then you have another landship and 2 more sprues of tanks, artillery, the Jezzails, 5 more bikes, and the lions. It would mean you can make this pack of 15 Steambikes, great, and have them infiltrate. It can mean you have a lot more options for the artillery we just talked about having some anti-tank and maybe some anti-infantry hidden. The Jezzails, we've talked about how oppressive they can be, but they're quite expensive, so up to you. And of course, you have another landship. It's up to you to see if you want another another starter set for 150, or this Laoshan, which is more than half the cost, but you have so much more in the starter set, because here you don't have terrain, you don't have the dices, the tokens, you don't have the infantry. Like, there is a lot, you have a lot less, but it's up to you. Though it's absolutely great. So you can have a Laoshan and a Wutai at the same time. If you want, you can pay about 30 euros less, a little bit less, and you remove, it's better there, and you remove indeed the landship, and you just have some more tanks if you want some more artillery, etc. But you just want a single landship, that's absolutely right. But if you want, of course, the core of what makes the Empire a great faction, you should have, and this is number 2, more infantry, because Empire infantry is amazing. The green banners, you want tons of them. The golems are incredible. The bike artillery, also great. The Bulnabangs, I'm not such a big fan, but the green banner flame team and the rocket platoons, again, incredible units. So the Empire, for me, have extremely specialized, very good infantry. That's what you want. Of course, I cannot not recommend you to have a second landship. And the last thing, if you don't want a second landship for a reason, then take the Armoured Regiment. As always, all these prices, if you go through my Place, you have minus 10%. And if you do that, remember to credit Love Wargames in your basket. We get like 2 or 3%, and that helps us a lot. So thank you if you do that. Alright, that was a very long video. Thank you for having watched until the end. But I really wanted to give you an overview of this faction starter for the Empire, and as well to check every single unit, what they do, and how to build your army, and etc. As always, if you enjoy this type of content that takes a lot of time to record, edit, prepare the slides and everything, give us a thumbs up, it really helps. Give us a comment as well, you might win an entire battle fleet, or it depends when the video is released. It can be the second or third wave of gifts, and it can be a conquest army, etc. Anyway, give us a comment, it makes us very happy, and you can win something, a massive army or fleet or something. And as always, if you really want to support us, use our affiliate links to buy through my Place. It really helps for Dystopian Wars, for Conquest, or yeah, Conquest as well, Armoured Clash, all these games. It's really how you can support the channel the best, because we're really trying not to open a Patreon or Tipeee and this kind of thing. We're trying to make sure that you just buy the things that you want, the miniatures, at a cheaper discount, and it makes the channel alive. So we're trying to keep with this editorial line. Thank you very much for having watched until the end. Remember to subscribe as well, that's very important. And until the next video, take care of yourself, and remember to keep things fair in love and war games. Bye.